My name is Teilor Sailor, and every line on my face is a story, a reminder of the moments I've faced and conquered. I look in the mirror and see silver strands woven into my hair, a reflection of wisdom earned through years of navigating love, heartbreak, and rediscovery. But what I've realized is that these aren't signs of wear, they're symbols of strength. I'm the kind of woman who believes life doesn't end when the world tells you it's time to slow down. I've lived long enough to learn what I deserve and to stop apologizing for wanting it. I've weathered storms that could have buried my betrayal, loss, and the quiet ache of starting over, but instead, I've turned those experiences into stepping stones toward something greater. I carry myself with a calm confidence that comes from knowing exactly who I am and what I've overcome. My passions are no longer dictated by the needs of others. Now, they are mine to nurture and explore. Whether it's picking up a paintbrush for the first time, rediscovering the joy of travel, or sitting in the sun with a good book, I am living on my terms. For 30 years, I gave everything to my daughter late night, comforting after nightmares, endless school projects, and sacrifices no one ever saw. It wasn't for recognition, just love. But the love I gave wasn't enough. On my 60th birthday, I waited for her call, knowing she had promised to visit. Instead, the call came with apologies wrapped in excuses. "Work's crazy, Mom. I can't make it tonight. Rain check, okay? I'll make it up to you." I swallowed my disappointment, assured her it was fine, and told myself to enjoy a quiet celebration. Alone. There was no grand dinner, no shared laughter over candles. Just me, a glass of wine, and the glow of my phone. But peace was fleeting. A photo popped up on my Feed Me daughter, smiling brightly, champagne in hand. She wasn't at work, she was at a party. And not just any party. She was arm in arm with Amanda, my ex-husband's wife, the woman who tore my marriage apart. There was no apology, no explanation, just the undeniable proof of betrayal, leaving me staring at the screen, my chest tight and my pride shattered. Something was about to change. No more blind loyalty. No more silent acceptance. This story was getting a rewrite. Call to action. Drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached. The phone lay face down on the floor, the muffled sound of laughter and singing continuing to spill from its speakers like a cruel echo. My hands trembled, my breath uneven as I stared at it, frozen in disbelief. "Happy birthday, Mom." Riley's soft, affectionate tone replayed in my mind, cutting deeper with every repetition. Not Mom as in me, the woman who had raised her, sacrificed for her, and loved her unconditionally. Number. That word had been meant for Catherine, the woman who had stolen everything from me so many years ago. I leaned back against the couch, my chest heavy with a pain I hadn't felt in decades. The betrayal was suffocating. Riley had grown up watching the aftermath of Charles's choices, seeing the tears I tried to hide and the quiet resilience I forced myself to muster. She had been there the day he walked out of our lives with 2 children who weren't his blood, leaving us to pick up the pieces. And yet, here she was, embracing Catherine as if the past had never happened, as if the woman at the center of it all hadn't torn our world apart. I forced myself to pick up the phone, my fingers tightening around it until my knuckles turned white. The video played on, each second a fresh wound. Riley stood close to Catherine, her smile radiant, as Jack held Annie in his arms, both of them clapping along to the song. David and Susan were there too, standing beside Charles, their laughter filling the room. It was a scene of perfect harmony, a family united, and I wasn't a part of it. My head spun with questions I didn't want to answer. How long had Riley been in contact with Charles? When had she started calling Catherine Mom? Had everything she ever told me about hating them been a lie? I closed the app and set the phone down, pressing my palms against my face in an attempt to steady myself. My chest burned with anger, but underneath it was something far heavier, a profound sense of loss. For years, I had convinced myself that Riley and I were a team, that the bond we shared was unbreakable. But now, for the first time, I realized I didn't know my daughter at all. The front door creaked open, pulling me from my thoughts. Riley's voice rang out, cheerful and bright. "Mom? We're home!" I wiped at my face quickly, schooling my expression as she walked into the living room with Jack and Annie trailing behind her. Riley's cheeks were flushed, her energy effervescent as she placed a gift box on the coffee table. "Sorry again about earlier," she said, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek. "Work was crazy, but we wanted to make it up to you." Jack nodded, offering me a sheepish smile. "We know it's not the same, but happy birthday, Tyler." Annie climbed into my lap, her small arms wrapping around my neck. "Happy birthday, Grandma," she whispered, her innocence a balm to the storm inside me. I smiled down at her, stroking her hair gently. But when I looked up at Riley, the weight of the video hung heavily between us. She didn't know that I knew. Not yet. Riley busied herself in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared tea. Jack settled Annie into a chair with a book, his warmth and attentiveness, a stark contrast to what I had witnessed earlier. I watched them quietly, the hurt and anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Finally, when Riley returned with a tray of steaming cups, I spoke, my voice carefully measured. "How was your day?" She glanced at me, her smile faltering slightly. "Busy, like I said, meetings back to back. I barely had time to breathe." I nodded, taking a sip of tea. "And how was the hotel?" Her hand froze mid-reach for a sugar cube, her eyes widening ever so slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone too casual, too forced. I met her gaze steadily, setting my cup down with deliberate care. "I saw the video, Riley. The one with Charles, Catherine, and their children. The one where you called her mom." The color drained from her face as she placed the sugar cube back on the tray, her hands trembling. "Mom, it's not what you think." I raised a hand, cutting her off. My voice was calm, but the words carried the weight of everything I had kept buried for years. "Do you have any idea what that woman did to me, to us? I gave up everything to raise you alone, to shield you from the pain they caused, and you stood there, celebrating with them, calling her mom." Tears welled in Riley's eyes, her composure crumbling. "Mom, please, just listen. Charles reached out a few months ago. He wanted to reconnect, to apologize. And Catherine, she's been nothing but kind. She even helped us with Annie's school application." I shook my head, disbelief coursing through me. "You don't see it, do you? This isn't kindness, Riley. This is manipulation. This is them erasing me from your life." Jack stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Teilor, I'm sorry. I didn't think I should have said something, but I didn't want to cause tension." I turned to him, my voice sharp. "Tension? You think this is just tension? This is betrayal, Jack, from both of you." Riley reached for my hand, her voice breaking. "Mom, please. You've always taught me to forgive, to move on. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wanted Annie to have a big family. I wanted things to be normal." I pulled my hand away, standing abruptly. "Normal? Normal disappeared the day Charles left us. You don't get to rewrite the past at my expense, Riley. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me?" The room fell into heavy silence, the tension thick enough to suffocate. Riley's tears fell freely now, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. For once, I wasn't going to put her feelings above my own. I turned and walked out to the porch, the cool night air stinging my cheeks. Behind me, I could hear Jack trying to console Riley, his murmurs filled with guilt. But I couldn't focus on them. For the first time in years, I needed to focus on myself, on what I deserved, on what I refused to tolerate any longer. And as the stars glimmered above, I made a decision. This was not the end of my story. This was just the beginning of reclaiming it. The tension in the room felt suffocating, wrapping around us like a vice. Riley's words hung heavy in the air, a weight I could barely bear. Her reasoning, her excuses, they weren't just hurtful. They were a betrayal of everything I had ever done for her, everything I had sacrificed. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the little girl who had sobbed in my arms, begging for her father's love, with the woman now defending him as if the past was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "So you're saying I've been stopping you from reconnecting with your father?" My voice was steady, but the chill in it was unmistakable. Riley shifted uncomfortably, refusing to meet my gaze. Her silence answered the question better than any words ever could. I studied her carefully. She didn't resemble Charles at all. Her features mirrored mine, a reflection of the woman who had carried her, loved her, and fought for her when no one else did. Yet here she was, defending the very man who had shattered our lives, the man who had poured all his affection into Catherine's children while our own bond lay neglected. My mind flashed back to the day Riley had sobbed in my arms, her voice trembling with heartbreak. "Mom, why doesn't Dad want me? Why does he want to be someone else's father? Doesn't he love me anymore?" At the time, those words had been like daggers in my heart. But now, they felt like mockery, a cruel irony given the woman Riley had become. She had turned her back on those questions, on the pain she had once felt, and embraced the people who had caused it. Riley didn't seem to notice the shift in my tone as she clung to my arm, her voice softening into a whine. "Mom, that's not what I meant. But think about it. Dad's old now. No matter what happened in the past, I still carry his blood in my veins. Isn't it time to let go of the resentment? She paused briefly, as if expecting me to agree. But when I didn't, she continued. It's easier for me when I spend time with Dad. Don't you understand that? Why can't you think about me for once? Her words hit like ice against my already frozen heart, and for a moment I couldn't speak. Years of sacrifice flashed before my eyes, the nights spent comforting her after nightmares, the days I worked tirelessly to ensure she had everything she needed, the years of loneliness I endured so she wouldn't have to grow up with a stranger for a father. And this was how she repaid me? I stood abruptly, forcing her hand to drop from my arm. Think about you! My voice was steady, but the fury beneath it was impossible to hide. Riley, I have spent every single moment of my life thinking about you. I didn't remarry because I didn't want you to suffer in a new family. I gave up my happiness, my future, for you. And you have the audacity to tell me to think about you after everything I've done? You've already made your choices, Riley, but don't you dare pretend I haven't thought about you enough. Riley shrank back, her confidence faltering as her lips parted in surprise. Jack stepped forward, his hands raised as if to pacify me. Teilor, please. We didn't mean for this to get out of hand. I turned to him, my voice sharp. Jack, you stood there in that video, celebrating with Catherine, knowing what she did to me, knowing what Charles did to me. Do you think this is some harmless misunderstanding? It's betrayal, Jack. Plain and simple. Annie, quiet until now, tugged at my sleeve, her voice timid. Grandma, don't be mad. I looked down at her, my heart aching for the innocence she didn't deserve to lose. But even her soft words couldn't erase the anger boiling inside me. I straightened, my gaze sweeping across all three of them. Listen carefully, Riley. I won't ask you to choose between me and Charles. You've already made your choice, and it's clear where your loyalty lies. But don't expect me to sit here and tolerate it. Not anymore. Riley opened her mouth as if to argue, but I held up a hand, silencing her. You've spent years pretending to stand by me while secretly reconciling with the people who hurt us. You might be fine living with that betrayal, but I won't. You've made your decision, and now I'm making mine. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Riley's face was pale, her confidence shattered. Jack looked down, avoiding my gaze, and Annie clung to his leg, unsure of what was happening but sensing the weight of it all. I turned and walked out of the room, the heavy sound of my footsteps echoing down the hall. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of clarity. Riley had chosen her path, and while it hurt, I knew I couldn't change it. But I could choose mine. The quiet click of the phone ending the call was louder than Riley's protests, louder than my own heartbeat. My hands shook slightly as I placed the phone down on the counter, the weight of my words settling over me like the calm after a violent storm. Since you no longer want me as your mother, I no longer need you as my daughter. Those words echoed in my mind, steady and resolute. For so long, I had been the center of Riley's world, bending to her needs, smoothing over her struggles, pouring every ounce of myself into her life. But at some point, without me even realizing, I to her roles had shifted. I had become disposable, a silent supporter expected to carry their burdens without question, without thanks. I sat by the window, the early morning sunlight filtering through the curtains. The neighborhood was quiet, the hum of life just starting to stir. For years, this moment would have been a brief reprieve in a day consumed by caring for others. But now, it stretched before me, empty and unclaimed a blank canvas. I closed my eyes, letting the memory of Riley's words wash over me. Do you even care that Annie was almost late for school? Do you expect us to go to work on empty stomachs? Her accusations had been sharp, cutting, but now they felt dull, like a weapon wielded against someone no longer afraid. What she didn't understand, what she might never understand, was that my care had always been a gift, not an obligation. Hours passed before I found the energy to get up and unpack the boxes I'd brought to my new home. The house was quiet, its walls bare and unfamiliar, but there was a strange comfort in that. I opened a box labeled kitchen and pulled out a teapot, its ceramic surface worn smooth from years of use. I cradled it for a moment, a faint smile tugging at my lips. This teapot had seen countless mornings, countless conversations over steaming cups of tea, but now it was mine alone. I filled it with water, the sound of the kettle bubbling on the stove breaking the stillness. As I waited, I glanced at my phone, half expecting another call from Riley. There were none. Instead, there was a single message text from an unknown number. "Mom, it's me, Jack. Please call Riley. She's been crying all morning. She's sorry, okay? Let's just put this behind us. You know she didn't mean it. We're family. We need you." The words blurred on the screen, but I didn't reply. I simply turned the phone over and focused on the sound of the kettle, its whistle rising steadily. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the pull to fix things, to smooth things over, to sacrifice my own peace for theirs. Instead, I let the whistle fade into the background, pouring myself a cup of tea and settling by the window. By late afternoon, I decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. The air was crisp, the streets lined with old trees whose branches swayed gently in the breeze. With each step, I felt a little lighter, the weight of disappointment loosening its grip on me. There was no schedule to follow, no errands to run, just the simple pleasure of moving forward. I passed by a small park, where children laughed and played on the swings, their voices bright and carefree. For a moment, I thought of Annie, her wide smile, the way she'd wrap her tiny arms around me and call me Grandma. A pang of sadness swept through me, but it was fleeting. Loving her had been effortless, but that love didn't mean I had to endure the constant disregard of her parents. When I returned home, I made a quiet dinner for one. The kitchen, once a space filled with chaos and noise, now felt peaceful. I plated my meal with care, lighting a small candle at the center of the table. It wasn't much, but it was mine every moment. Every decision belonged to me now. As I ate, my mind wandered back to the years I had spent sacrificing for others. I thought of the nights I stayed up nursing Riley through fevers, the mornings I braided Annie's hair and packed her lunches, the afternoons spent scrubbing floors and washing dishes. I had done it all with love, but somewhere along the way, I had lost myself in the process. Not anymore. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of peace. It was fragile, like a newborn bird, but it was there, fluttering quietly in the depths of my heart. For too long, I had tied my worth to my role in other people's lives, but now I was free to redefine it, build a life that was full, not of sacrifices, but of choices. And as sleep finally claimed me, I dreamed not of the past, but of the future, a future where Teilor Sailor stood tall, unbroken, and unapologetically free. The mall was bustling with life, the chatter of shoppers blending into the background as I strolled through the aisles, my mind a quiet storm of thoughts. For years, I had avoided places like this, always prioritizing Riley's needs over my own. But today was different. Today, I had finally decided to treat myself. The weight of years spent sacrificing for someone who could not see my value had lifted, if only slightly, and I was determined to enjoy the freedom I had finally reclaimed. I browsed racks of dresses, delicate scarves, and sparkling jewelry, letting the vibrant colors and soft fabrics remind me that there was still joy to be found. A rich crimson scarf caught my eye, the silk smooth under my fingertips. I smiled faintly, picturing how it might brighten my wardrobe. This was a new chapter, I told myself, a chapter that belonged to me. But as I reached for the scarf, my stomach clenched. In the corner of the store, I saw them, Charles and Catherine. They walked side by side, their voices low and familiar. For a moment, Charles's gaze flickered toward me, uneasy and hesitant, before darting away. Catherine, on the other hand, wasted no time. She strode toward me with that same smug smile I had grown to loathe. "Oh, Tyler, fancy running into you here. Shopping for clothes too, I see?" Her voice was loud, deliberately drawing attention to us. A few heads turned, curious eyes flicking between Catherine and me, as her smile widened. She let her gaze travel over me, up and down, before shaking her head theatrically with a sigh. "Goodness," she continued, her tone dripping with faux concern. "You're always so busy taking care of the house and the kids. Even if you buy something nice, when will you have time to wear it? Unless," she leaned in slightly, her voice dropping into a whisper loud enough for nearby shoppers to overhear, "you've finally set your sights on some old man and want to dress up a little?" Her words were calculated, designed to humiliate me in public. The few shoppers close enough to hear tilted their heads, eager for gossip. But if Catherine thought she could make me falter, she was mistaken. I smiled, meeting her gaze steadily, and let out a dramatic gasp. "Oh, but how could I ever compare to you, Catherine? The way you threw yourself into my husband's arms right after your own died, bringing along your 2 kids, of course with talent like that, I could never hope to compete." The store fell into stunned silence as the realization hit. One woman near the entrance gasped audibly. "Oh, she's an old homewrecker." Catherine's smug expression twisted into one of fury, her cheeks flushed red with embarrassment. Charles stepped forward quickly, his jaw clenched, his voice low. "Teilor, that's enough." I turned to him, addressing the growing crowd with a gesture toward Charles. "Everyone, meet the man who left his own daughter behind because someone else's kids needed a father more. He abandoned his own child without looking back, but was more than happy to play daddy to someone else's. And guess what? Those kids still only call him uncle." My words cut deeper than I had intended, striking at a wound Charles had carried for years. Even after all this time, even after raising Catherine's children like his own, they had never acknowledged him as their father. His fists clenched at his sides, his face dark with anger, but he said nothing. Around us, the whispers grew louder, someone muttering, "What a fool." Another snickered. "Talk about being a doormat." Catherine's fury was visible in every tense muscle of her face, but instead of arguing, she grabbed Charles's arm, yanking him toward the exit. And just as they reached the door, fate decided to play one last cruel trick. Riley appeared. She was coming off work, walking through the mall, when she spotted Catherine. Her pace quickened, concern filling her voice as she called out, "Catherine, what's wrong?" The frustration and anger that had consumed Catherine moments ago melted away in an instant. Straightening her posture, she shifted into a pitiful stance, her voice soft and filled with just the right amount of sadness. "Oh, it's nothing, Riley. Your mother's still upset with me, that's all. I suppose I shouldn't have asked you to celebrate my birthday with me." Riley's eyes snapped to me, her lips pressing into a thin line. Still angry from our fight earlier, she didn't hesitate to take Catherine's hand and turn on me, her glare sharp and accusatory. "Mom, do you have to keep throwing a tantrum like this? Just look at Catherine, she's kind, gentle, and understanding. Meanwhile, you're always so bitter and angry. Do you really wonder why Dad chose her over you?" Her words were a dagger straight to my heart. I raised my hand without thinking and struck her across the face. Riley gasped, stumbling back, her hand flying to her cheek as her eyes widened in shock. "Mom, you hit me again!" I stared at her, at the daughter I had loved more than life itself. But as I looked at her now, I felt nothing but emptiness, a cold, detached realization that severed the last thread keeping me tethered to her. This girl, this woman, was no longer my child. Without hesitation, I reached out and shoved her, pushing her toward Catherine and Charles. "If you love them so much, then go ahead. Call them Mom and Dad. I have no interest in being your mother anymore." Riley let out a sharp laugh, looping her arm through Catherine's as if to spite me. "Fine. Who needs a mother like you anyway? Catherine is a better mom than you ever were. At least she knows how to let go of the past instead of wallowing in it like some bitter old hag." As Riley turned to Charles and Catherine, declaring her loyalty to them, something fell from her pocket, a driver's license. It landed face up on the floor, the name printed clearly, Riley Spencer. I froze, the name glaring at me like a cruel punchline. Once, Riley had begged me to change her last name, to erase the connection to Charles. "I don't want Dad anymore," she had sobbed, curled up in my arms. "It's just us now, Mommy. We're the only family we need. I want to have your last name so we can always be together." Now she was Riley Spencer. She had erased the last tie between us. I waved her off, my voice calm, devoid of emotion. "Do whatever you want. Your name, your life, it has nothing to do with me anymore." Walking out of the store, I blocked Riley's number. Every connection, every thread of attachment was severed. On the way home, I booked a group tour online. It was time to see the world, a world I had sacrificed for promises that were never fulfilled. The mountains, the ocean, the freedom that awaited Methos were mine now. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. Zoe's laughter crackled through the video call as she pointed her phone toward Riley's burned-out apartment window. The blackened remnants of what was once their home stood as a haunting silhouette against the late afternoon sky. "Your ungrateful daughter finally got what was coming to her," Zoe said, grinning mischievously before delving into her usual rapid-fire storytelling. Apparently, after my departure, Riley hadn't handled things well. Fueled by resentment over my decision to leave, she had grown closer to Catherine, her new mother figure, as she had once so smugly declared. But Catherine, ever the opportunist, had used Riley's newfound loyalty to her advantage. "So get this," Zoe continued, her tone practically dripping with glee. Catherine decides that since Riley's got this big house, even if it's mortgaged, that's good enough for her freeloading kids. She dumps David and Susan on Riley, saying, "We're all one family now, so they should spend more time together." I could practically see Zoe rolling her eyes through the screen. David, of course, doesn't do a damn thing. Never liked school, never worked a day in his life. Just loafing around, doing nothing but eating and making a mess. And Susan? Oh, she's no better. Girl spends all her time trying to find a rich guy to marry, thinking that's her golden ticket. Neither of them lifted a finger to help Riley. And Jack? Poor guy couldn't handle it. He's working all day, coming home to that chaos? Recipe for disaster. I shook my head, but I wasn't surprised. Catherine had played her hand well, roping Riley into the very same dysfunction I had tried to shield her from. "And the fire?" I asked, my voice calm but curious. Zoe grinned, a little too excited to share the details. "Oh, this is the best part. So apparently, David decided to fry something in the kitchen and walked away to watch television. Next thing you know, poof, kitchen's up in flames. And Susan? She's busy taking selfies, posting online like her life's perfect, while the rest of the apartment is burning down. Jack and Riley were at work, so by the time they got back, the place was basically a giant barbecue pit. I let out a long breath, leaning back in my chair. The irony wasn't lost on me. Riley had fought so hard to rebuild a family with Charles, Catherine, and their children, only to see it literally go up in flames. Zoe lowered her voice, her expression softening just slightly. "Laura, are you okay? I mean, I know this is a lot." I smiled faintly, shaking my head. "I'm fine, Zoe. Really. Riley made her choices, and so did I. It's not my concern anymore." Her face lit up with approval. "Good, because honestly, you deserve better than all that nonsense. Speaking of which, when are we going to plan that weekend trip we've been talking about? You need to get out and have some fun." I laughed softly, the sound light and genuine. "Soon, Zoe, very soon." After the call ended, I sat in silence for a while, the weight of the conversation settling over me. I thought about Riley, about her smug words from our last encounter. "Catherine is a better mom than you ever were." I had let those words cut me back then, had let them linger and fester like an old wound. But now, in the face of everything that had happened, they felt hollow. Riley had chosen her path, aligning herself with people who only took from her, who offered nothing in return. And in doing so, she had lost the one person who had ever truly been in her corner. It wasn't out of malice that I walked away, it was survival. I had spent too many years giving myself to people who didn't deserve it. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds chirping outside my window. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm golden glow over the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt light, free. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the world slowly come to life. My phone buzzed on the table, a notification from the travel agency confirming my next trip. I smiled to myself, already imagining the mountains I would climb, the rivers I would cross, the adventures that awaited me. The world was vast and beautiful, and for so many years, I had been too consumed by others' needs to see it. But now, it was mine to explore. No more waiting, no more sacrificing, no more being tethered to a life that didn't value me. As I stepped outside to begin my day, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. My past, with all its betrayals and heartbreak, no longer defined me. I had reclaimed my story, and for the first time it was one I was proud to tell. Riley stood trembling, clutching Annie's hand so tightly that the child looked terrified. Her voice was raw, shaking with disbelief as she shouted at Jack, her words breaking under the weight of betrayal. "We've been married for 7 years. I gave birth to your daughter. How could you do this to me?" Opposite her, Susan stood disheveled, half-dressed, and entirely unashamed. Years of chasing after wealthy men had left her immune to shame, and now, in front of the growing crowd, she smirked and leaned into Jack's arms, making herself comfortable. "Oh, Riley, come on," Susan drawled, her tone dripping with mockery. "You've turned into a frumpy old housewife. No job, no social life, just stuck at home wiping snot and cleaning up after a brat all day. How could Jack not get sick of you?" She tilted her head flirtatiously, batting her lashes at Jack. "Tell me, baby, would you rather be stuck with her or be with me?" Riley's body trembled violently, her face pale as she looked at Jack, desperate for something in explanation, a reason, a denial. But Jack didn't flinch. He scoffed, his voice cold and dismissive. Why are you making such a big deal out of this, Riley? You should have stayed home with the kid. What are you even doing here? What man doesn't cheat? Then with a sneer, he added, your own father did it, didn't he? He left your mom and ran off with another woman. And you, he jabbed a finger at her, his tone sharp and cruel. You forgave him. Hell, you even started calling that woman mom. So, if you could accept it back then, why the hell can't you accept it now? Riley's face went deathly pale, her head shaking over and over as if trying to deny the reality unfolding before her. Jack, how could you say that? How could you say that? She lunged for him, her hands raised to hit him, but Jack merely shoved her aside. Tightening his arms around Susan, he looked down at Riley as if she were nothing but a pathetic joke. Let's not kid ourselves, Riley, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Did you really think your father took you back because he loved you? Please. If I hadn't been making good money and bought that house, he wouldn't have given you a second glance. The only reason he accepted you again was because he wanted more money for David and Susan. And you, he let out a dry laugh. You fell for it like an idiot. But hey, at least you did one thing right. He ran a hand down Susan's back, his smirk widening. Susan's a lot more fun than you, so let's cut the act. Let's get divorced. I don't want the kid you take her. We'll split the money and go our separate ways. And since you were so supportive of your mother's fate, I'm sure you won't mind following in her footsteps, right? Each word stabbed into Riley's chest like a knife, one blow after another. Her hands clenched into fists, her entire body trembling violently as tears streamed down her face. Her breathing was ragged, on the verge of completely breaking apart. Meanwhile, Susan smirked, casually flipping her hair before bending down to look at Annie. Sweetheart, she cooed, her tone sickeningly sweet. Don't you think your mommy's overreacting? Grown-ups do this kind of thing all the time. She's making such a fuss over nothing. Riley's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fury. Don't touch my daughter, she screamed, lunging forward to yank Annie away. But in her panic, her grip was too rough, too tight. Annie screamed, tears welling in her little eyes as she fought against Riley, her tiny hands slapping at her arms. You're a bad mommy. I don't want you, Annie cried, her voice high-pitched and full of anger. Riley froze, her breath catching in her throat. Annie, she choked, her voice breaking. I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. I raised you. How can you say that? She lifted her hand, whether to grab her, to scold her, to discipline her, but before she could, Annie bit down on her wrist hard. Riley gasped in pain, and Annie ran straight into Susan's arms. Annie turned and glared at Riley, her face scrunched up in anger. You're always mean to me. I don't want you. I want Susan to be my mommy. Silence. Everything stopped. Riley stood there shaking, her eyes glassy with shock, and then her gaze met mine. For a single moment, time seemed to freeze. Her face twisted into something unreadable pain. Realization. Maybe, just maybe, for the first time, she understood the cruel, unforgiving irony of it all. She had become me. Everything she had done to me, every wound, every betrayal had come back. And now, she was the one standing in the wreckage of her own choices, the one left behind, the one broken. That evening, I sat on the couch in the quiet of my home, the past and present colliding with every breath I took. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, its warm hues fading into deep blues and purples. Riley stood at the doorway, hesitant, her silhouette framed by the pale glow of the porch light. Her hands trembled, clutching the straps of a bag slung over her shoulder. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Finally, I opened the door, calm as ever. Her gaze met mine, her eyes brimming with tears. Mom, I was wrong, she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of regret. The words hung between us, heavy, but I said nothing. I let her cry, let her apologize, let her confess every mistake she had made. The lies, the betrayal, the blind loyalty to people who had never truly cared for her. Her sobs filled the space, each one a quiet plea for forgiveness. I watched her, my heart steady, unmoved by her desperate attempts to rewrite the past. And yet, as memories of her childhood flickered in my mind of the years when it had just been use, I felt something shift. The silence stretched until I finally spoke, my voice firm but not unkind. Wrong about what? Her breath hitched, her sobs stuttering as she forced the words out. I shouldn't have lied to you. I shouldn't have stood by their side. I shouldn't have hurt you. Her voice broke entirely, trembling with the depth of her guilt. I shouldn't have assumed you'd always forgive me, no matter what. I should have seen everything you've done for me. I shouldn't have ignored it, or you." Her confessions spilled over, one after the other, as if saying them aloud might undo the damage. She apologized for each moment of pain, each time she had turned her back on me, each thoughtless word. When she finally fell silent, her tears falling freely, I stepped aside, wordlessly leaving space for her to enter. From that night on, Riley didn't demand my forgiveness. She didn't beg for things to return to the way they had been. She moved in quietly, her actions humble and without complaint. Slowly, she began to learn to cook, to clean, to listen, to care for me just as I had once cared for her. She never asked for affection or warmth. She never protested the coldness in my demeanor. Instead, she let time and patience guide her. Days turned into weeks, and the resentment I had once held began to crack, its edges softening little by little. One morning, while returning home from a walk, I passed by a bakery. On a whim, I bought a box of pastries, the same ones Riley had loved as a child. I didn't say anything when I placed them on the kitchen table, leaving them there without explanation. When Riley saw them, her hands trembled as fresh tears welled in her eyes. She didn't speak, but her gratitude was palpable. Maybe I hadn't truly forgiven her. Maybe I never would. But for the first time, I was willing to give her a chance.